The state of Florida is home to 1.6 million Cuban Americans, the largest Cuban diaspora in the world. For years, this community was protected by a unique law that allowed them to obtain a green card after just 1 year in the United States. But today, Cubans are no longer an exception under Donald Trump.
Thousands of Cubans are facing the threat of deportation under this new Trump administration. This is something new for most Cubans because they've been having special protections for so many years, but now Trump came and pulled the rug right under their feet. So today we're gonna be going to Florida, look at the situation in Florida for Cubans there, and then we'll go straight to the island, Cuba, to see how things are, because Cuba has been cut off from the rest of the world. Now, enough talking, let's just start the video.
The policies of this government are shutting down even legal ways to come to the United States or to remain in the United States, not only for people who enter here legally, but also for people who enter crossing the border and now are applying for asylum.
Asylum is what Ludmila Marcelo's client is requesting at a hearing at an immigration court in Miami.
I already explained to these clients what is going to happen. The possibility of the pretermission based on Ecuador agreement with the United States, and that the only way to avoid that is going to be appealing as soon as possible.
Ever since Trump's return to office, many asylum claims have been dismissed without a hearing on the grounds that migrants could seek protection in other countries. We cannot enter the courtroom, but Marcelo meets us again after the hearing.
The judge was sympathetic. He told her that she needs to appeal in order to her removal order to not be active.
But the appeals process can take up to 2 years. 2 years during which this woman can be detained by ICE despite a pending court decision. Marcelo, who is Cuban American, says the current climate is frustrating.
As an immigrant myself, I get frustrated when all immigrants are treated the same, like criminals.
Hold on. What did she say? Did she say she gets frustrated when all immigrants are treated the same? Does that make sense? Because I think because she's Cuban, so they are so used to having privilege. Like you had, they only would stay 1 year and get a green card. When all other immigrants had to suffer through the system. I'm an immigrant myself, so I'm speaking from experience. But it's quite sad at some point. I know people would be happy seeing Cubans facing all this because Cubans have not been the very best people, especially to other immigrants. So, and they majority voted for Trump. They are always MAGA Republicans. So seeing this happen to them, I'm sure most people want to celebrate that. I personally don't feel that way, but it's just shocking to me seeing how shocked they are. Like, I guess if you have privilege, you don't realize you have it until it's gone. But let's continue.
But the situation is even worse for Cubans who came to the U.S. legally and are hoping to adjust their status. They can be sent back to Cuba because a pending adjustment does not grant legal status. Over 100,000 people in this legal limbo are believed to be living in the United States. We were able to meet with one of them. He arrived in 2023 after crossing through 4 countries.
Cuando tuvimos la posibilidad por medio de una aplicación,
when we came, we saw that there was an app. We signed up and waited for our appointment. When the date came, we went legally to a port of entry. Authorities inspected us, questioned us, and then admitted us on the condition that we could stay in the country for 2 years with a work permit. But now, with this new government, they've labeled us not only as undocumented, but as criminals, even though we haven't committed any crime and did exactly what the government asked in order to enter the country legally.
Y solamente por haber hecho lo que el propio gobierno nos había pedido para poder entrar al país de manera legal.
This man made the decision to leave Cuba after the protests of July 2021 and the crackdown that followed. He never thought he would end up living in fear after giving up everything.
Tuvimos que vender lo poquito
We
que
had to
teníamos.
sell
Quedamos
almost
en una
everything we
posición de
had,
venderlo
and
todo.
even then,
Incluso
we
así,
barely managed
prácticamente
to
no
scrape
íbamos a
together
alcanzar.
enough money.
Si mañana,
If tomorrow,
Dios no
God
lo
forbid,
quiera,
we had to
tenemos
go
que
back to
regresar a
Cuba,
no
we would have
teníamos
nothing
nada.
left.
Y bueno,
So we
tienes
live in
miedo.
fear.
Te levantas y
We
tienes
wake up
miedo.
with fear.
Vas a
We
trabajar,
go to
tienes
work with
miedo.
fear.
Tu hijo
Your
va a la
child
escuela,
goes to
tienes
school
miedo.
and you're
Vas
afraid.
a un hospital,
You go
tienes
to the
miedo.
hospital and
En
you're
todos
afraid.
esos lugares
Because
están
everywhere you
pidiendo
go,
el estado
people ask
migratorio.
you for your
Hay
immigration
veces que te lo
status.
piden solo por
Sometimes
información,
it's just
pero no
routine,
sabes
but
si
you
en
never
ese
know
preciso
if it's the
momento
moment
puedes
immigration will
caer
show up
y
to arrest you and separate
separarte
you
de
from
tu
your
familia.
family.
Living in fear and receiving rare support from the Cuban American community, which is overwhelmingly Republican.
Para nosotros que acabamos de llegar, no lo podemos entender.
For those of us who have just
Incluso cuando tú le
arrived, it's
preguntas a esas
incomprehensible.
personas, bueno, pero ¿por qué?
I'd like to
¿Por
know
qué
why they
apoyas
support
a
this
esta
administration,
administración?
why they
¿Por
think
qué
we
sientes
shouldn't be
tú
here
que
when
yo
they
no puedo
are.
estar aquí y tú sí? Dame
They've
una explicación.
forgotten where they
¿Se
came
han
from,
olvidado de dónde vienen?
why they
Olvidaron
emigrated,
cómo
how
entraron,
they got here.
olvidaron por qué migraron.
I mean, that's a great point. I always ask myself, like, why do Cubans who are in America act so badly to other immigrants? Like, I always ask myself that one, because if you look at Cuba, the island, I've never been to the island, but from the look of things, I think the Cubans living in the island are different from the Cubans in America. Like the Cubans in Miami, in Florida, are totally different from the ones in the island. How they think, I think, and how they act is different, because the ones in America will always vote for their worst policies. Like they will vote for things that will harm them. They will vote for MAGA, and then MAGA policies will crash the island. I don't know the reasoning behind that. Maybe somebody in the comments can let me know why they do that. It's quite shocking to me see people turn against their own people that way. But let's continue.
The first Cuban exiles came to the U.S. after the revolution in 1959. The country welcomed them as refugees from communism.
This was us with my grandparents in Cuba. That's my mother, my grandmother, and me with my first Holy Communion. This was in Varadero.
Alicia Peláez was brought to the U.S. by Operation Peter Pan in 1960, a secret Catholic program that resettled around 14,000 young Cubans without their parents, who feared children would be sent to indoctrination camps.
They went little by little. They would take away, private businesses. They would take away your land. So when it came to the law to take away the kids and send them to the camps, you could imagine that they were going to do it. Sooner or later, we have had to come. There was no way of staying.
No camps were ever built, but since then, Cuban Americans have remained close to the Republican Party, seen as taking a tougher stance against the Castro regime. But not Alicia, one of the rare voices of her generation to reject that allegiance.
They don't realize that so many programs here were done by the Democrats. Things they have nowadays is because of the Democrats. But to them, they're communist. They forget how they were welcome, how they became prosperous, and they're not showing that towards now, what's happening now.
For many Cuban Americans, a hard line against Havana matters more than immigration, a paradox for a community built entirely on exile.
I mean, that's it's quite something. One time I remember I was speaking to a Hispanic guy, and he was telling me how Cubans, before this Trump administration, how some Cubans would be calling immigration on other Hispanics. Like they will be calling immigration on other Mexicans. They will be calling immigration on other people. The guy had so much extreme views. He told me like, hey, never ever trust a Cuban or a Venezuelan. Like that's what he told me, to be honest. I know that is super extreme view, but he told me that I'm not Hispanic, so I didn't know much about the community. But he told me that never ever trust a Cuban or a Venezuelan, or they will always preserve themselves first and leave you hanging. I mean, obviously that's very extreme. You cannot generalize everybody. But from the things that we are seeing, majority of Cubans, they still, given the chance, they still would vote for Trump if the election was held today. Now let's go to the island of Cuba and see how things are in the island, especially after Maduro was kidnapped and now the island is locked out from the rest of the world. They are not getting oil. Things are getting so bad in Cuba. So let's go to the next video and see how things are in Cuba.
Cuba is a country running on fumes. No fuel has entered the island in more than 3 months after being cut off by the U.S. With gas and just about every other essential in short supply.
This is how serious the fuel crisis is. These cab drivers have been here all night. They're actually pushing this cab to conserve what little fuel they have left. In this line, they only get 5 gallons of gas, and to get it, they need this government-issued card.
Life for everyday Cubans has become grueling and unyielding. Empty and pothole-filled roads, crumbling facades, and trash-filled streets. Cuba is facing its worst humanitarian crisis in 6 decades. Weighed down by stagnant economic policies at home and a relentless U.S.-imposed trade and financial embargo. Lifting the old embargo would require an act of Congress, not just the president. This January, President Trump signed an executive order accusing the Cuban government of extraordinary actions that harm and threaten the United States, threatening any country with punishing tariffs if it tries to get oil to Cuba.
Taking Cuba, I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel sharply criticizing the president's comments, saying in a post on X that any aggressor will face an, quote, unyielding resistance. A decade has passed since President Barack Obama arrived in Havana, the first sitting U.S. president to do so.
I mean, look at the contrast. Look at the contrast of Trump with Marco Rubio, a Cuban, surrounded by Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, another Cuban, one of the worst human beings to walk the planet, Ted Cruz. Trump is there saying how he wants to take Cuba, do whatever he wants with it. A few years ago, Obama was in Cuba, the first president, trying to fix things. But if you ask a Cuban, would you vote for Trump or would you vote for Obama? They will still vote for Trump. So it's quite amazing. But let's continue.
Since Calvin Coolidge, hope people had then for radical change has dwindled.
I think that the worst thing that happened is the moral deterioration of the people.
These children don't have time to spare. 4-year-old Ariani Cesar has spent half of her young life in this bed at this Havana hospital battling kidney cancer. Mom, Arlenis Martinez, tells me from travel to treatment, things have only gotten harder. Her biggest fear, it's her who will pay the price. When push comes to shove, what do I do with my little girl? Her plea to Havana and Washington, keep these innocent kids in mind. They didn't ask for any of this.
Buenos días, ¿cómo está?
And it's not just hospitals. Pharmacies are virtually empty. Either my family sends it or I buy it from people selling online, this woman tells me. Giovanni Rafael Peleta has worked at this Havana upholstery shop for 15 years. He's grateful the lights are on today after Monday's national blackout that lasted more than a day. It's like having a rope around my neck, he says. They keep squeezing, squeezing. He welcomes help from any country, including the U.S. Things are just too dire, he says, to keep throwing stones.
I mean, you can see things are so desperate in the island. They're getting, blackouts nonstop. They don't have any oil. Trump has threatened any country helping Cuba with tariffs. So they're basically locked out. They're being choked, like the guy said. It's just a slow, painful demise of Cuba, of whatever is left of Cuba. So it's extremely sad to see this because people are really suffering in the island. You saw the mom begging the Trump administration to think of the children. I doubt they think of anybody. Do you honestly think you'll find compassion in this administration? I should not be laughing. There is no compassion in this administration. They are as cold as they come. So I don't think the pleas will help in any way. But that's how the situation is. The Cubans in Miami, Florida are facing the threat of deportation. The Cubans in Cuba are suffering. So it's a very desperate situation for Cubans in general. So let me know what you think of this situation. Thank you for watching the video up to this point. If you like this video, consider liking and subscribing. And of course, share this on all the networks. I'll see ya.
Oh my goodness, all the networks! Wow! All the networks!